I tell anyone who is a Batman fan, especially the movie The Batman, to read this book. This is um, Riddler Year One. This is a DC Black Label book. This is written by Paul Dano, the actor who played the Riddler in the movie, with art by Stevan Subic and letters by Clayton Cowles. And so, what's unique about this is a lot of times when we see celebrity writers, they're almost always paired with an industry veteran. Whether it's they're writing it together or one's there sort of kind of edit or guide or help along, right? Not the case here. This is all Paul Dano. So I was very intrigued to read this when it was first announced, and I was a bit blown away by just how good of a comic book writer Paul Dano is, because I had no idea what to expect.
Yeah, it's not like that's just because like a celebrity goes and writes a comic, like people, he draws more attention, but that doesn't mean anything to people like us who are, who read comics all the time. Like, we want to read good stories. It doesn't matter who's writing it. Like, we want to read quality stories. So yeah, I wasn't like going into this like, oh, like, he did a great job with the character. You got Stevan Subic and Clayton Cowles, like you said, like, he's got a good creative team, but I was like, you still got to write a good story. And so yeah, I'm glad that it worked out well.
Yeah, and so you could tell that Paul Dano reads a lot of comics because it just
that's awesome.
It was written in a way like that we're used to for comic books, right? And so the pacing was on point. It was just you could have told me that Paul Dano had been writing comics for 10 years, and I would be like, yeah, it makes sense, right?
Wow.
It just
that's
read
amazing.
really well.
I don't think you need to tell people any more than that. That's amazing.
Right. So synopsis: as depicted in Matt Reeves' hit movie The Batman, the Riddler wasn't simply an amusing eccentric with an affinity for wordplay and baffling clues, but as terrifying a villain as any in the annals of the Dark Knight. And so I've said this before. I think Heath Ledger really does set the gold standard for villains, not just in a Batman movie, but I think just in general. But in sort of Batman's rogues gallery that we've seen cinematically over the years, I put Paul Dano right up there, in his role as the Riddler. Because what we're used to with the Riddler, right, is sort of this, as it says in the synopsis, goofy, eccentric. He wants to be the center of attention, right? He wants you to, right? Well, yeah, exactly. But even in the animated series, right, the Riddler was attention seeking, right? And that's the antithesis of what we get from Paul Dano's Riddler in the Batman. He's this recluse. He likes leaving clues. He's very much that typical, prototypical serial killer, right? That you like real life where they'll leave clues because they're taunting the police. They're taunting, right? They want to be caught, but they don't want to be caught. You know what I mean? Like, they like playing that cat and mouse game. And that's what we get, from Matt Reeves and Paul Dano's, interpretation of the character. And so what this book does is, really, gives us a great origin story, for that character, but also really allows us to explore that character more than what we got, in the movie. Right. So that was a real treat, right, to read about. This is a great companion piece to the movie. So this was 6 issues on DC Black Label, and it is on Hoopla if you're curious. So if you want to go check it out, and you have the Hoopla app, you can go find it there and read it. And I highly recommend doing so because it's that good. And so, like I said, Dano really surprised me, with his ability to write a comic book. Like I said, the pacing, the plotting, the suspense that he creates, was excellent. And this was, a must-read, top of the list priority book for me every month that it came out. And I gave this book, so I would, we got the review copies, but I bought the physical copies. I gave it to my nephew. I was a little skeptical doing so because the matter it's a little bit more mature. But
was it Black Label?
It was Black Label, but he loved the movie so much, right, that I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. And it definitely dealt with some hard themes like mental illness, right? And sort of that just dissension into madness. That could be very real for a lot of people. Like
Hmm.
he did a great job tapping into that. Like I talk about all the time, like with Sean Lewis or Chip Zdarsky. Some of these writers just have this innate ability to tap into like the human condition and really get you to feel that. And he does an excellent job with that, in this book. And so what we see from the character of Edward Nashton is we have a character who, he's been bullied, he's been forgotten, he's been neglected, right? But at his core, as he sort of grows up, and we've got a little bit of that in the movie, but he wants to do good. And there's a huge chunk of the story where he's trying to sort of, he's hired for this job. He's a numbers guy. He figures out something isn't right. And he wants to do good. He knows that something is fishy. And he wants to do good. And someone takes his work, tries to pass it off as their own, and then gets swept under the rug because Gotham, as we know,
Hmm.
at its heart, at its core, is as corrupt as anything, right? And so like just being marginalized, being bullied, being shut out, being shunned by society, you really in each issue you just sort of see that slow descent into madness. And where
Hmm.
he really feels connected is through online chat rooms, which we get a
Wow.
little taste of in the movie, right? But they
Yeah.
didn't explore that enough because like it's a movie and you gotta you only have so much time to tell. But this kind of filled in a lot of those gaps. And then this book ends right where the Batman begins. So it's a great origin story for the character. It's a great
Nice.
companion piece. It really I wish some of these comic book movies would do a little bit more, because a lot of times when we see these types of books come out right around or just either before or after the movies, we think it's a cash grab, and a lot of times it is. But this, you could tell, was very much a passion project for Dano, because I think he's on record of saying like how much he just wanted to continue to explore this character, and he does so in these pages. And so this is as good as any Black Label book, that I've read.
Nice.
And if you love Matt Reeves, the Batman, and I would highly recommend, reading this. And as for Subic's art, right? It's brilliant. It's dark. It's depressing. He really does capture that tone of what Gotham City should be. But I think I've said this before. I can't remember what book it was, but like, the theme of mental illness and depression and madness, you can feel it. you,
Hmm.
you 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 get it from the writing, but you see it from the art. Like you can feel that. And it really just like it's gut wrenching, for the character and for you to see it. But like it, I don't want to say you sympathize, right, with the character, but you do. There's a part of you that sort of
Sure.
does.
Well, it's natural. Like that's why you like read stories is like to get different perspectives, and then it's like you're ideally like you're going through like stuff that's representative of what
Yeah.
like this type of people go through. As much as like he's a monster, so it's
Right.
yeah. That's like that's this sounds like when you called dibs on this book a while back. Like I didn't have like the FOMO feeling that I get with some of these other titles, like with the six fingers in the one hand. But at the same time, I was also like fuck, man. Like I was definitely gonna read that shit. You know what I mean? Like it is, and
Yeah.
I was right to be pissed. Clearly,
Yeah. Again, another instance, I was pleasantly surprised. And even my nephew, like, I try to get him to talk about comics, and he's a teenager, right? He doesn't
yeah.
want to, this was a
Talking.
book. He was like, when I try to get him to talk about a book, this one he always like, oh yeah, this I love that. This is my favorite book. And it had some twisted covers, man. Just like it was a very twisted story, but it was very fitting for Black Label. And I hope they continue to do more of these. I know that Tom King's doing a Penguin book, right?
Right.
So like it's just exploring these characters, like being great companion pieces to the movie. But this, I think I know Keith is a big Black Label fan, and I've told him numerous times, like, get your hands on this one. Like this is one I've recommended to people. I'll continue to recommend to people. It's a great character study. And if you enjoyed the movie, you're going to enjoy this book.
Riddler Renaissance. Who fucking knew that we were going to get that over the last few years? Who knew we needed that? But
The
yeah,
Riddler
Oscar.
Sans.